I just want to say then that the subject we're looking at today, it's not airy-fairy and oh, that would be nice if I switched off a bit more. This is actually really significantly important for everyone to not just listen to, but actually to do something about it. Because then, I mean, I was in schools for over 30 years, and the number of times I would dream about school, I couldn't go to sleep because I was thinking about how was I going to manage that lesson or that child or that parent the next day, and it invades everything. So we're really talking about quality of sleep, resting so that your brain is actually off from school, and the implications of that being health and energy and so much more. Okay, so keep
Yeah,
going.
if you can't do it for yourself or for your family, and you're so focused upon your school community, and whether that be your students or your staff or everything, it makes you better at your job. There's no doubt about that. One thing I didn't mention is that when we switch off, our brain goes into what's called the default mode network, which is where we're able to see patterns that we're not able to see when we're focused upon something. And that's why we suddenly have an aha moment when we're out on a walk, or we wake up in the middle of the night with a realization, because when we're looking at something too close, we can't see the wood for the trees. So you're right. This isn't just a nice to have or a luxury or airy fairy. Nothing I do is airy fairy. It's, everything is very concrete. This is essential. And when we spoke last time, I was going through a phase where I started to realize how much not switching off was a problem for educators and leaders. And it became quite a kind of mission of mine to find out more. And so in April, I launched a survey, and over 500 school leaders took part, which is a good participation rate. And what I found out was really quite staggering. So I think it's interesting to just share as we talk a little bit of the data so that we can understand just how serious this problem is. So only 14% of people that took part in the survey, 1-4, said they always or usually switch off in the evenings. Yeah, I know. Only 28%, so less than a third, are able to avoid work-related communications. Wow. And again, 28%, so less than a third, say they find it easy to relax when they're not working. Shocking. And then just two more pieces at this point, and then we'll talk a bit more. 37%, only 37%, say they can look after their own needs without feeling guilty.
Oh my goodness me. I thought it was only me, but it's okay,
No,
it's a lot of us.
This is endemic. And then, I'm sure we'll talk about rumination in a bit. You and I were just talking about that before we started recording. So nearly half say that they always or usually ruminate over things that have happened at work or things that they're worried about might happen in the future in their non-work time. So what we see there is a pattern of people not being able to relax, not switching off, feeling guilty about looking after their own needs, and thinking over and over again about what's been happening at work or what might happen.
Oh my goodness, those statistics have shocked me. I'm really so sad. I speak to educators at conferences because I have a very interactive session, and they tell me the symptoms that they see of stress in their teams and in themselves. But actually, for those statistics to be so bad, it is really prevalent, this problem, isn't it?
Absolutely. Of course, there's going to be a participant bias here where the chances are that people that took part were people that were feeling like they were struggling, and we have to acknowledge that. But nevertheless, there's nothing in the work that I've done in the last 5 years as a consultant and the last 12 years kind of in this area that indicates to me that this data is off in any way. This is an endemic issue where people cannot switch off, and this is a serious business. I think it's interesting to understand, what does the research say are the barriers to us switching off? What are the things that are structurally kind of included in our work as educators that mean it's harder for us to switch off than it might be for people in other jobs? Do you think that's worth exploring?
Yeah, definitely be fascinating.
I think there are three things that we can point to. One is long working hours. So working long hours, working intense, fast-paced days. That's certainly one of them. The second one is poor boundaries between work and home. And that can include, kind of digital as well, that constant accessibility, which is absolutely something that's got much worse in recent years. And then the final one is this emotional component. Working in emotionally intense conditions also makes it harder for people to switch off. And the more emotionally intense the conditions, the more likely that we are to ruminate. So this is what we're up against. We need to put in place measures to help us to intentionally switch off, because we're already starting from, in minus numbers, as it were, just to get back to zero. We need to do something.
Yeah, and action needs to be taken. And I spoke to a group of teachers actually with a course that I put out to the world, and they were all saying, we need this, we need the self-care, we need these ideas of how we switch off, how we look after ourselves, how we can change our habits and our mindsets. But they said, we haven't got time because our day is so chaotic. It's so long already. Where are we going to fit a course in? So head teachers and we looked at this together, and we designed my new course, which is 5 minutes at the start of every staff meeting. But the feedback is that people aren't used to talking to their team about these things. They're not used to challenging themselves about their habits, maybe even looking at their own strengths, and are they using their strengths, and thinking about their thought life. We know statistically we all have 80% negative thoughts, but
Yeah,
actually, if you don't address all these things, nothing is going to change. And because as educators, doesn't matter if you're a leader or a teacher or in admin anywhere, you are giving out all day in our roles. So the emotional expense is enormous and
yeah.
exhausting.
Absolutely. And, as I've said, the emotionally intense conditions is one of the barriers to us switching off, and, there will be other professions, other caring professions that experience similar things. But I think that sometimes we don't realize just how structurally built into our work and our day this is. And therefore, in order to counter it, we need to be intentional. And what you said about the 5 minutes, I have the same thing, I'm posting on LinkedIn all the time and sharing strategies and things. And I do sometimes have people come to me and say, but I don't have time for that. I have no time at all. And the truth is that actually burnout is not an explosion. Burnout is an erosion. It happens slowly over time. Thousands and thousands of micro behaviors that we normalize over a period of years are what eventually ends up causing us to burn out. It's not one or two big things. And the converse is true. The way that we fix this is not with a big holiday once a year. It's with the thousands and thousands of what I call micro repairs. So we cause damage through these thousands of micro tears, and then we can put that right through thousands of micro repairs. So all these little things that we don't think matter, or we don't think are enough to make a difference, those are the things that make the difference. So, it's like from the book Atomic Habits, they're tiny. These tiny things that we do actually are impactful. And so I think everyone has time to engage with this.